Yo, what's up, YouTube? Welcome to the Coffee Pod. My name is Shisha Zed.
Drink the coffee, it'll make you feel better.
This is part 3 in my series of divorce stories. This episode is titled Divorced Women versus Family Court. Without any further delay, let's get into it.
Roderick and Roseanne got married right out of high school. She was kind of a go-getter. She went to college, got her 4-year degree. He, on the other hand, didn't amount to a whole lot. He had a few jobs on and off, but he developed a drinking problem, a gambling problem. He was an athlete in high school, but that didn't translate well into adulthood. He gained a bunch of weight. He was pretty much lazy. Well, after she finished college, she left. They split up, but they didn't get divorced. About 15 years later, they'd been married now for almost 20 years, she decided she was going to file for divorce. She was shocked to learn from her lawyer that he was going to be entitled to half of her 401k that she had been saving up. It was now worth in excess of $500,000.
Beautiful.
She was shocked. Folks, remember, there's a clock that starts running when you get married, and that clock doesn't stop running until you get divorced, until the judge bangs that gavel and says you're divorced, and anything you acquire during that time period is going to be marital property subject to division. Do you have an internet business? Many of you do. If you do, listen up. This is a story about Tamara and William. They got married at a young age. She was 19, he was 21. He had a decent job at the time. He was working at a local warehouse. Tamara wasn't working at all when they got married, but soon after they got married, she started an online-based business. Now, her business consisted of her showing different makeup and beauty tips. I don't understand it, but apparently that's a thing. Apparently it can make money. It started out as just a hobby, but soon after that, it started making money. And by the time they filed for divorce, about 7 years later, her little hobby was making over $200,000 a year, far more than what William was making. Now, at first, William wasn't interested in the little hobby and thought it was ridiculous. That is, until he spoke to his divorce attorney and he realized it's a legitimate business, it's worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it's marital property, meaning he has an interest in that business even though he didn't start it and doesn't have anything to do with it. The problem is, how do you value such a business? Well, believe it or not, there are actually companies out there that will look at the business and give it a value. They will value internet business. The issue with this business was whether the business had a value apart from Tamara. In other words, if the business was sold and she was no longer involved in the business, would it still make money? Or was she such an integral part of that business that you couldn't separate the business from her? Well, as it turned out, the business had an estimated value after the evaluator analyzed it of about $450,000. They finally agreed that William would keep his entire 401k, which at the time was worth about $275,000. She would keep the business, but she would pay William $75,000 as his share of the business at the rate of $2,500 a month for 3 years. Valuating these businesses can be tricky. Those businesses can be somewhat speculative. They depend on the platform that you're on, the reputation that you have, the whims of your viewers. The valuator will look at things like revenue stream, inventory, if you have inventory, debt, intellectual property rights that you might have, operating cost. Then there are additional intangible assets that they're going to look at, such as the time spent building the business, the effort required to maintain the relationships of the customers you have. All those things will be taken into consideration. But if you have a business, an internet business, and you're married and you're contemplating divorce, keep in mind that that business is probably worth some money. Michael was 3 years old when his parents separated. They agreed on a week-on, week-off schedule. Dad would have 1 week, Mom would have 1 week. When Dad would bring Michael home from his parenting time for the start of Mom's parenting time, Mom would find a bruise, a cut, a scrape, a knot on the head, something going on with Michael that would cause her concern. So what did she do? Well, she called the Department of Children's Services and reported that Michael had been abused at his dad's house. Every time, DCS would have to send an investigator over to Dad's house to do a full investigation to determine whether or not there was abuse. And every single time they found no abuse. Every single allegation was unfounded by DCS. Well, this went on for a year and a half, 17 allegations. So Dad took Mom back to court with a petition to modify, based in part upon all of those allegations that Mom was making that were unfounded. Mom admitted to it in court. Dad ended up getting custody of Michael, and Mom had weekend parenting time with an admonition not to make unfounded allegations of abuse against Dad to DCS.
Beautiful.
Mom and Dad were the parents of a 2-year-old little boy, and they went through a divorce. In the divorce, Dad got standard parenting time every other weekend. Well, about a year later, Dad was involved in a horrible wreck. It was his fault. He was drunk. He killed somebody. He was charged with vehicular homicide, and he did about 6 years in jail. When he got out, the kid was about 8 years old, didn't know who he was. He shows up at the front door with the parenting plan in hand, torn and tattered, claiming that he was entitled to parenting time, and he was right. Mom had never gone back to court to ask the judge to modify the parenting plan to suspend Dad's parenting time. Well, this little 8-year-old boy was devastated. He didn't know who this man was that showed up at his door wanting to take him away. He was scared to death. Mom should have gone back to court because there was a change in circumstances. Asked the judge to suspend Dad's parenting time until Dad got out of jail and could come back to court and prove that he could be a good parent. That's the only solution in this situation. Mom was strung out on drugs and couldn't care for her son. He was 6 years old. So what they did is they moved in with her parents, the child's grandparents, and they began to take care of the child. Mom would be gone sometimes 2 or 3 days at a time. They were left to feed, clothe, and shelter that little boy, take him to school, get him home. Mom would come in and threaten to take him if things didn't go her way. So what the grandparents did is they went to court, and they initially got a protective custody order, a temporary order giving them custody of the child. The problem is they had to notify the child's natural father. Well, he had never really been involved in the child's life. The child was 6 years old. He had maybe seen the child 2 or 3 times. But once he was put on notice, he came from a different state where he lived to Tennessee where this case was pending. And he said, hey, that's my child. I want him. Well, the grandparents were horrified. But guess what? They were unable to prove that he posed a substantial risk of harm to the child. So guess who got the kid? The father got the kid.
Beautiful.
Grandparents lost custody. Mom lost custody. Father has custody. So Mom's driving down the road at 85 miles an hour in a 55 mile per hour zone. The problem is the kid's in the car with her. To compound the problem, the kid is not in a child restraint seat, but is sitting in the front seat with the front seat airbag strapped into the seat belt. Kid's 3 years old, should have been in a child restraint seat. Cops pull her over. Cops arrest her for reckless driving and child endangerment for not having the child in a child restraint seat and going 85 miles an hour in a 55 zone. Dad got wind of the fact because DCS was called to the scene. They in turn called Dad. Dad came and got the child. Next day, he hires a lawyer, goes into court, asks the court to give him custody of the child because of Mom's behavior. The judge heard all the proof and refused to do that. The judge said, I'm going to give her another chance.
Wow.
Looked at Mom with a stern warning. If you ever do it again, Dad's going to get custody. What do you think about the outcome of that case?
Jim was Lieutenant Commander of the United States Navy, and he had patience. He could wait things out. He was deployed overseas at some point, and his wife filed for divorce. He was able to delay those proceedings for about 3 years. He didn't really want a divorce, didn't really care one way or the other, but his wife sure wanted one. She had moved on, found somebody new, wanted to get married to him, start a whole new life. Now, they'd been married for about 15 years, so she was entitled to half his retirement, half his TSP, half of just about everything. He didn't want her to get any of his retirement or his TSP, so he just drug things out. After about 3 years, finally, she gave up. She threw in the towel. She said, you can keep your military retirement, your TSP, I just want a divorce. So she signed the paperwork and the judge granted the divorce. In that case, he had a lot of patience. That cost Mom close to $300,000 in lost income from the retirement and the TSP, but it saved Dad the same amount.
Beautiful, 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 beautiful story. Yeah, man, a couple of wins here for the guys, right? And I'm not counting score, man. Come on, why would I do that? You know what I kind of gather from these type of stories is when I hear situations where women are getting treated unfairly in family court, I imagine that they gain more sympathy than when men get treated unfairly in family court, right? And I really believe that that's the only way change will come. That's the only way laws will get changed, is more women experiencing the unfair treatment. That's the only way I see change coming. Why? Because we live in a gynocentric society. We live in a society that caters to women and tries to make life as comfortable as possible for them. And men in these types of situations, a lot of the times are kind of like disposable and seen as like, it's okay, he's a man, right? He'll get over it. I don't think bringing awareness to these situations like myself and other people are doing will really bring any true change when it comes to the laws. I think what it does is really cause men to seriously contemplate marriage and see if it's worth it for you. Look at the person you're with, right? And come to that decision by yourself, but you should be informed. I think you should at least be informed, right? You should at least know the dangers and the gravity of the situation when it comes to marriage. But change will probably come from women complaining and getting a taste of what it's like to be on the receiving end of child support, on the receiving end of not having custody of your kids, and on the receiving end of paying alimony till their husband either dies or remarries. Then women will start saying, hey, there's something wrong here and people have to look at this. Things have to change. And there's your equality for you, right? Guys, let me know what you guys thought. Which one of those stories kind of stood out to you the most? As always, man, I appreciate you for checking out this episode of The Coffee Pod. And let me know if you want to see more of these attorney videos. I have a bunch of them coming. All right, guys, till next time, I'm out. Peace.